Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I sat down for an extended conversation with Congressman Eric Swalwell. He represents California's 15th district. As you probably know, he made a presidential run in 2020. He's a former prosecutor himself, and he served as one of the impeachment prosecutors, in the second Donald Trump impeachment. Congressman Swalwell has written a book. It's called Endgame, and it's his behind-the-scenes perspective of the first impeachment of Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, it is a terrific read, and it just came out in paperback. So here is part one of a two-part series, my extended conversation with Congressman Swalwell about, you guessed it, accountability and justice. Because justice matters. All right, I am thrilled to announce that we've got Congressman Eric Swalwell, representative from California, joining us on Justice Matters today. And I am excited to talk about him for a host of reasons, not just impeachment, but because I've read his book, as I'm sure many of you have. I've got it here, Endgame, and it is inside the impeachment of Donald J. Trump. So I want to ask him about that. I also want to ask him about some legislation that I actually had the good fortune of sort of being a bit player in with his legislative director, Andrew Ginsburg. But let me just start by saying, Congressman, welcome to Justice Matters.
Oh, thank you, Glenn, and I'm excited for your podcast.
So I actually want to start with a couple of things that I read in the book, because it sort of touches on everything, not only that our nation has been through, but that we are still going through, courtesy of Donald Trump, who seems to be hanging around like a bad habit that we can't shake. And let me start by asking you some of the basics. Why did you want to write a book about your experience and your perspective on impeachment part one?
I saw it, Glenn, as a call to action that we are in the end game of democracy. And Endgame is the name of a Taylor Swift song, and I'm a Swiftie, but it was not titled because of that. It's also an Avengers movie, and I love those films. But actually, in chess, it's really the final moves on the chessboard. And I think Donald Trump, as far as democracy goes, has kind of taken us to the final moves. And it's a matter of, will democracy redeem itself or will Trumpism prevail? And actually, what we found in the November election was that the match was not settled. We're almost in like this overtime where the midterms are really going, I think, to determine which direction the country goes. And January 6th put this country on life support in many ways. And so, we're still in the thick of this. I don't want anyone to think for a second that just because Donald Trump is no longer president, that he does not affect what's going on. And I think you, in your windup there, alluded to it, that he won't go away. And all the factors that existed before January 6th still exist today, right? He's claiming that he's going to be reinstated. He's got wide acceptance among members of the Republican Party who are buying into the big lie and believe that he's a legitimate president. QAnon still persists with their conspiracy theory, and they have members of Congress who are legitimizing and validating it. So I think we're just as vulnerable to another January 6th-like event as we were on January 5. And so it's a call to action as far as what we need to do to ultimately make sure the end game goes our way.
And sort of as I was working my way through your book, and no, I am not getting a cut of the proceeds, but I do have to say I'm a crime fiction junkie. So I actually, I saw sort of flashes of writing by one of my favorite crime fiction authors, Michael Connelly. Now, your book is crime fact, it's nonfiction, but I felt a little bit of Michael Connelly in there, certainly some Bob Woodward, because what you report out about what you saw kind of from the inside is some, I think, pretty dramatic and important reporting. And then I also saw a little bit of Carl Hiaasen, who is the searingly funny Florida novelist. So I will say, you know, when I'm reading through the book, you've got chapters that are titled things like Donald J. Trump, really? You have a chapter titled The Joker about Steve Bannon. You've got a chapter titled The Man with the Nixon Tattoo, who needs no introduction. But then obviously the thrust of it is very serious. It's The Times Have Found Us. It's Dad, Do Not Worry. And it's Countdown to Impeachment. I want to cut right to the chase because one of the things that I have often retweeted that you wrote nearly a year ago to the day is the need for a presidential crimes commission. You were a former prosecutor. I was a former prosecutor. You're a political person. I'm a law and order person. I see myself as apolitical. But you tweeted almost 1 year ago to the day, I don't say this lightly. When we escape this Trump hell, America needs a presidential crimes commission. It should be made up of independent prosecutors who look at those who enabled a corrupt president, and then you using sabotaging the mail to win an election as one example of that. Where are you on the belief that we still need a presidential crimes commission, and what might that look like?
I believe we need it, Glenn. I think Donald Trump is benefiting from the January 6th insurrection in that, as I mentioned earlier, the match Trumpism versus democracy has not been resolved. In fact, as I said, we are day to day as a democracy. And so we're trying to hold him accountable for what he did on January 6th. That, of course, happened with the impeachment trial in the Senate. It's happening with the Select Committee. We have people on the inside, you know, from Marjorie Taylor Greene to Madison Cawthorn to others, you know, Mo Brooks, you know, who helped really enable the big lie, you know, I think are responsible. And so I think it's a balancing of, you know, how do you address this clear and present danger to our democracy, but then also look back and have, you know, a true reconciliation by having a crimes commission. And so, you know, I'm trying to be a team player and go along with what the priorities are, which is, of course, Select Committee, and then putting in place, you know, laws that'll make sure this never happens again. But I think it'll be a disservice, you know, to our democracy, and I actually think it will threaten our democracy if there is not, you know, full accountability in an independent way for what Donald Trump and his enablers did. And Glenn, we just learned this weekend from, you know, Acting Attorney General Rosen appearing before the Senate over the weekend that there is so much more to learn about how far people were willing to go and the laws they were willing to break to try and enable Donald Trump's corruption.
And tell me if I'm reading some of these tea leaves right. I kind of feel like I'm the eternal optimist. I hope I'm not kind of bleeding over into being Pollyanna about things. But one of the things that you said in your book was that America sometimes suffers from the inability to see darkness for what it is. And I think, you know, our optimism sometimes struggles with our realism. But as I'm reading the tea leaves, when I see the blockbuster reporting by Katie Benner and others in recent days about first Donald Trump telling some of his Justice Department officials, just say the election was corrupt. Let me and my allies in Congress take care of the rest. And then we have one of his DOJ officials, Jeffrey Clark, taking him up on that and committing what I would call an overt act of drafting a letter to Georgia state officials and the state officials in 5 other states, basically giving them a roadmap to throw out Biden's win and corruptly declare Trump the winner. When I saw that the Senate Judiciary Committee spent 7 hours on Saturday in August interviewing Jeffrey Rosen and others, it feels like momentum is building for accountability. Am I wrong about being that optimistic?
No, you're absolutely right, Glenn, that, you know, more and more people are coming forward. And the frustrating part is, boy, it would have been helpful if Acting Attorney General Rosen came forward when we needed witnesses in that impeachment trial, right? I mean, we were calling every potential witness. We were scrambling to try and get them in, and we were being told everywhere we looked, you know, talk to my lawyer and I'll see you in court, meaning that they would fight our subpoenas. And we could have actually prevented Donald Trump from ever seeking office again had people come forward. I think we were that close. You know, we ultimately had 7 Republicans join us We weren't too far away, though, from the votes that we needed, just 9 more, and that would have been it. So, yes, it is encouraging. And I think that, as you know, in your former line of work, witnesses beget witnesses. And sometimes witnesses need, the courage of others to inspire them to believe that they can tell the truth and that they'll do so without, any effect on their reputation or livelihood. So yes, I don't think this looks better for Donald Trump. And I ultimately think at the end, he doesn't age like a wine. He ages like milk, and it only gets worse.
And I agree with you that witnesses beget witnesses, evidence begets evidence. Part of my concern is that inaction begets inaction sometimes.
That's right. That's a
So
great
let me
point.
ask you this, because this is something we've been batting around forever. If the select committee, which I think is doing remarkable work, and it's so nice to see committee hearings where everybody's serious, not only the Democrats, but the Republicans who Nancy Pelosi chose for the committee, which frankly was a brilliant move. If witnesses are subpoenaed and they contemptuously refuse to comply with the subpoena, do you think the committee and Congress generally is prepared to avail itself of all 3 options: criminal contempt, civil enforcement, and the inherent power that Congress has to compel witnesses to comply with subpoenas?
I'll leave that to Speaker Pelosi. My personal opinion is that we have to, and I think she will be. She's likely looking at the recent Supreme Court and Circuit Court of Appeals cases that have shown that the congressional subpoena power does matter still. After all, Don McGahn fought us for years to try and avoid coming in to talk about the Mueller report, and he ultimately sat down with us and gave an interview to us, and so we prevailed there. So we have to make sure we assert that power, because if we let people say you can't subpoena me and then we don't subpoena them, that is the slow death of Congress's subpoena power. So yes, to me, that means holding them accountable by fighting them in the courts. I support legislation that Ted Lieu and others have brought, which would bring back Congress's civil contempt and the fines that it would bring, because I do think you start fining people to the tune of $10,000 a day, that they will start honoring their duty to the Constitution and the rule of law. So yes, I don't think this is a case where it's not like the Senate impeachment trial, Glenn, where Joe Biden needs to get his appointees confirmed. He's got to get a government up and running. He's got the COVID relief plan that needs to be passed, and all the pressure of that was bearing down on us. Here, that pressure doesn't exist, and the Select Committee has time and patience and recent court rulings on their side.
So, friends, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my extended conversation with Congressman Eric Swalwell, and I hope you'll tune in for part 2, which I'll post tomorrow. But in the meantime, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.